Hi everyone, it's Carrie, aka Nerdy Girl Creates, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. Yes, I know I'm late to the game, but after multiple obstacles and unforeseen events, I finally made it to the theaters and saw the movie. So I do want to talk about it, but first, I need to warn you, if you have not seen the movie and you do not want to be spoiled, please back away from this video now and come back later when you have watched the movie, because I will be spoiling. Alright, you have been warned. So, initial thoughts. What did I think of Spider-Man No Way Home? Well, first off, it is definitely the better of the three Spider-Man MCU films. This felt a lot more like Spider-Man. I think the other two films depended too heavily on Peter having a mentor, whether it was Tony Stark in the first movie or Nick Fury in the second. He also didn't have a lot of stakes. Now, if you've read Spider-Man comics, Spider-Man, things don't always go right. And a lot of things go wrong. It affects both his personal life and his life as a superhero. He seemed to be kind of coasting through that with maybe the occasional, "Oh, Peter, that was a bad thing. You shouldn't have done that," type of, criticism. But he's never really felt, repercussions of his actions. And I think this movie finally did that. Now, the other problem I've always had with the other two Spider-Man movies is the lack of connection to the comics. So besides the stakes and feeling repercussions and things going wrong, his supporting cast was not the cast from the comics, pretty much. You have Michelle Jones, aka MJ. She is not Mary Jane Watson. You have Ned, and Ned is replacing Harry Osborn. And you have no Osborns in the series with the exception of what I'll get into later. And Flash Thompson was not Flash Thompson. I'm sorry. I know you were trying to, they were trying to update it, but it just didn't feel like a Spider-Man movie, just a name and costume and alone, personality-wise. I think Tom Holland could be a really good Peter Parker Spider-Man, but it's like I don't know what was holding them back from actually letting him be that character. It was like they didn't feel confident that alone Spider-Man could hold everything up. I mean, they always had to throw Tony Stark in, they had to throw Nick Fury, and even in this movie they throw Doctor Strange in, but Doctor Strange does not take up as much time as the other two did. He's more of an instrument for Peter to try to fix things. And I also don't like them omitting Uncle Ben, because Uncle Ben played a very big role in who Spider-Man was. They do try to rectify this, but instead of with Uncle Ben, it's with Aunt May. And, okay, even with Aunt May, she wasn't really the Aunt May from the comics. They made her younger, and I don't think I was as bothered with that. But the fact they never once mention Uncle Ben, and the only time it gets mentioned in this movie is not by the MCU Peter Parker. So how was the story? Well, like I said, Peter is dealing with the fallout at the end of the last movie with Mysterio framing him for bad things and also revealing his identity to the world. Now, the one thing I had a problem with is they quickly rectified Mysterio's accusations. They bring in Matt Murdock, who's not in the movie that long. He's pretty much in one scene talking to Peter and just briefly gets to display his abilities, which kind of puzzles Peter, and he blows it off as, well, I'm a really good lawyer. But they managed to clear Peter, but then poor Happy is got to get a lawyer because they're going after him instead. And it was just kind of like, okay, well, that would have been more interesting if they play it out. Later on, they did try to bring it back by Jonah Jameson, once again, going out of his way to expose Peter Parker, which was something I also missed from the other two movies. There was no Jonah Jameson. And now we have him, and it's played by the guy from the original three Spider-Man movies, J.K. Simmons, and I love it. So yeah, they try to kind of rectify it again by trying to make him look like the bad guy again, which I don't think sticks long. I did kind of how can I say this? I did kind of prefer Michelle in this than the last two movies, because she was a condescending bitch in the other two movies, let's be honest. There was nothing likable about her. In this, she's not so much. She's trying to be supportive to Peter. Ned is there for Peter. They suffer the consequences with him, which is part of Peter feeling guilty. And one of the things that really motivates him to go to Strange and see if he can make everybody forget him. Well, Strange agrees to do it, and during the spell, Peter realizes that everybody is going to forget him, everybody he knows. And he starts messing with the spell by saying, well, what about this one? Can they remember me? And what about that one? It causes, like, a problem with the spell. Things go wrong. Strange has to contain it. He gets mad at Parker. Parker leaves. Strange told him during all this, like, why didn't you just go to the College of Missions and ask them to give you another chance? Because the thing that happens is they were all trying to get into MIT, and because of the incident, they all denied. So he feels guilty, goes and finds the head of the missions on the highway. This is a scene you see in the commercials where Doc Ock shows up, and then later on Green Goblin. Peter's fighting Doc Ock, and let me tell you, the villains from the original 3 Spider-Man movies, which are Doc Ock, Green Goblin, and Sandman, are terrific. Even though I kind of felt like Sandman took more of a backseat to all the other characters in there. Later they bring in Electro, Jamie Foxx, and I think they did a better job with Electro here than they did in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. They also bring in Lizard. Lizard kind of didn't have much of a part. Him and Sandman were kind of like second fiddle to everybody else. But I think they did a good job with all the villains in the sense of giving everybody some type of redemption arc or improving on where they failed with them originally. So I did like that. Of course, the big reveal, and it's not really a big surprise because people knew about it way before the movies, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield show up. And it's because Ned gets a hold of Doctor Strange's ring, and he uses it to open a portal because he's looking for his Peter, but instead he finds them. And they apparently got transported over to our timeline when the spell went wrong. So you got Andrew Garfield from Amazing Spider-Man, you got Tobey Maguire from the original 3 Spider-Man movies, and they agree to help. Now, Tobey's character is much older, which gets confirmed later by Doc Ock. So he's been doing Spider-Man for a while, and him and Mary Jane found a way to make things work. You don't get to see Mary Jane in this, which was kind of a shame, because I really want to see Mary Jane in one of these Spider-Man movies and not a knockoff. He also does mention what happened with him and Harry, which concerns Ned because he thinks that because he is Peter's best friend that he is doomed to become a villain. And there's a funny scene where he promises Peter he will never betray him and become evil, and Peter's completely confused by it. Then you have Andrew Garfield talking about Gwen Stacy, and there's a scene where he kind of redeems that moment where he jumps off and he saves Michelle Jones, this MJ, and he lands and he's holding her and he asks her if she's okay, and she notices him crying and she asks him if he's okay. And that was kind of a sweet scene, like, because that scene kind of got, I don't know, it was like they rushed into that scene in the Amazing Spider-Man, and it didn't feel like it was deserved because the person who became the Goblin just kind of became the Goblin 3 minutes before, and it wasn't developed over time. Like, there wasn't like this grudge, or I kind of felt like they should have gone with the original Green Goblin for that, but that's in the past, so let's move on. Also, you had this great dynamic with him and his aunt encouraging to always do what's right, even if he thinks, that he's supposed to do it despite not feeling comfortable. And she's the one who pushes him to try to save these villains, because if Strange sends them back now, they're all doomed to die. So he goes ahead and decides he's going to find a cure for all of them. Things go wrong. Aunt May ends up dead. He's angry. The 2 other Peters show up. Tobey Maguire, Peter, starts giving him the "with great responsibility" speech, which, ironically, a few moments before Aunt May had given him. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man recognizes this, and both of them talk about who they've lost. Andrew Garfield talks about Gwen Stacy. Tobey Maguire talks about Uncle Ben. And I was kind of hoping at this moment, like, the MCU Peter would be like, yeah, I lost my Uncle Ben too, because even Andrew Garfield does mention him losing Uncle Ben. But no, it's only Aunt May. So I'm assuming Uncle Ben does not exist in this MCU, which kind of sucks, because it also contradicts What If you watch the zombie episode. In the end, they finally give us the Spider-Man we've wanted since the first movie. And they do this by disconnecting him from all the other MCU characters. And what I mean by this is, in the end, the spell breaks loose, and the only way Peter thinks of that it can be stopped is to convince Strange to erase everybody's memory of him. So nobody's going to remember him. MJ, Ned, Strange, Happy, all his classmates, nobody, anybody. And Strange goes through with it after Peter convinces him it's okay. And he moves on, and he first he's going to go back and tell MJ and Ned who he is and what they are to him, but then he doesn't. And I think it's because he realizes they're safer this way, and he leaves. So he goes and gets an apartment, and he's living in New York City. He's probably getting ready for college. He makes the classic costume from the comics with the light blue and the red and black stripes, and he's officially become the Spider-Man from the comics. Now, where this is going to go, I can only speculate. One of my opinions is that maybe he is now completely disconnected from the MCU and will be strictly Sony, since Sony still technically owns the movie rights to Spider-Man. A friend of mine actually pointed out an interesting part at the end of the movie when he swings out of his apartment in his brand new costume. He swings over Rockefeller Center during Christmas, and she goes, "Do you think this is like when Hawkeye is happening and maybe he runs into Kingpin?" I said, well, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? But I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's going to be maybe him not interacting anymore with the MCU characters. Just mostly now the Sony-verse. I think they did leave it open for Venom, because if you watch the after credit scene, even though Eddie Brock and the symbiote get sent back to their timeline, Venom leaves a piece of him behind. So that's interesting. I know Vulture is showing up in the Morbius film, and Morbius is also a Spider-Man villain. They just announced Kraken. Got Pirates of the Caribbean on my mind. They announced Kraven. So it's possible that we won't see Peter as part of the Avengers anymore, or interacting with any other Disney Marvel characters. And you know what? That might be a good thing, because, like I said, I haven't liked how they handled Spider-Man mostly in the MCU. He's been kind of like anything but Spider-Man. Like, you see glimmers of it. Yes, he's got all the powers. He's got the suit. But he's more reliant on, like, a mentor all the time. And he doesn't have the supporting cast that everybody who's fans of the comic know. He doesn't have that loss from Uncle Ben. There's no mention of Uncle Ben. I know I keep saying this, but that bothers me. So it could be a good thing. Sony could just probably finally make him as close as possible to the comic book version, and I'm hoping that's where it goes. It's just a shame we haven't gotten this from the beginning. Now, overall, what did I think of this movie? I thought it was a good movie. Compared to all the other MCU films coming out right now, it's probably the best. Is it the best Spider-Man movie? It is, again, as I said in the beginning of this video, the best of the MCU Spider-Man movies. I would not say it is the best of all the Spider-Man movies. Now it has potential. It can go that way if handled correctly. But I still think Spider-Man 2 is the best. I still think, William Dafoe's Goblin is awesome from the first Spider-Man movie. Doc Ock in the second one is great. And I think they need to get a villain that's for the next phase that's going to match their level or be even better in order for this to work. And who knows who it's going to be? I mean, they still have a whole cast of different characters they can use. I just hope now, if they are just going to make it strictly Sony, they do Spider-Man and they do him justice. So tell me down below, have you seen Spider-Man No Way Home? Did you like it? Was it your favorite Spider-Man movie? What were your favorite parts, etc.? Go on, don't be afraid. Comment down below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And I will see you on the next video. Bye.